This is a radical new perspective on spirituality. Got that first image in an office. Of course, it's kind of a squished image, how it's showing up on my screen there. But the important thing is there's trees out the window, and then I don't know if those are trees. In the background of the picture, there's a picture on the wall, right? And there's a background with some trees in the background. A radical new perspective on spirituality. Now we have some, this is like if you're standing at the base of a bunch of trees and you take a picture of these really tall trees, and then there's the red instructions there. Read this from the bottom up. Since I'm reading it out loud, this will be easy for you to follow along, but scroll to the bottom, then read one paragraph at a time, starting with the very last one. Begin now. Now, before we begin, be aware that there's a picture below the red text of looking straight up at the forest, right? These really tall, straight, probably pine trees. So that's what it looks like when you're standing below the really high things and look straight up at them. Very different perspective, different angle there, right? Okay, scrolling all the way down. At the very bottom, we got another picture. That one's like you're right there at the trunk or climbed up a limb, sitting on a limb or something. Wow, that's up close. All right, so are you ready to begin? Because we're going to begin really soon. Okay, here we go. Before anything else, such as languages and labelings, first is the eternal, inclusive, almighty creativity. Everything listed above, everything we're about to address in a moment, is a temporary form or manifestation of the fundamental creative capacity that can be called God. Another picture of looking up a tree and all those little branches and twigs and stuff. Okay. Next are distinct tangible mortal bodies. Galaxies, solar systems, planets, continents, islands, valleys. You get how those could be distinct. One valley from the next valley, like, it could be tangibly, physically distinct. Also, organisms. That's kind of an important category of mortal bodies. We'll come back to that one later. Organs, tissues, cells, molecules, atoms, quarks, those are all distinct, tangible, mortal bodies. Of course, bodies are in quotes. It's a linguistic unit. But as a linguistic identity, it corresponds, these things correspond to actual distinct things, observably distinct things. Yes, two planets can collide, but, temporarily we can have, for a few billion years or million years or whatever, we can have two separate, distinct planets, and then they collide, and then they explode, and then they, whatever, they both blow up, and they aren't around anymore. But for however long they last, these mortal bodies, like valleys and continents and planets and galaxies, these mortal bodies endure. Now, I have a special note there in parentheses. Note: government jurisdictions are not organic. All the stuff I mentioned above is organic in a certain way. Government jurisdictions are not organic, and neither are constellations of stars. So somebody from some perspective looks at the sky and says, okay, those 7 stars or those 5 stars or those 19 stars or whatever, that's a constellation. That's a different thing. That's not an organic group. Those are arbitrary appearances that correspond only to certain points of reference. For instance, if you take a picture of a forest from a few different angles, like next to it, inside of it, looking up at the trees, or above it from a hillside, then the visual patterns formed by the trees and the forest completely alter, right? There are infinite two-dimensional shadows of three-dimensional arrays. So if you take a a jar in your hand, like a jar of pickles, or what else would be a good thing for this? Something. A plunger. Okay, we've got a plunger from the bathroom. Now, this is important stuff. You got to get how this is. It's not just random and spontaneous when I make up these examples. This is sacred, holy things. The plunger is the most important thing in the universe, right? Okay, because when you hold the plunger, like you're looking straight down on it, and you see the little central circle of the shaft of the plunger, and then the bigger circle around it of the dark or whatever part, you know. You're looking straight down on it, you sit it on the ground, and you look right down on it from above. That's how a plunger really looks, right? Now you shift over a little bit and look at it from the side, straight. You set it up on top of the sink, and you're looking at it like that. That's how a plunger really looks, right? Or if you leave the plunger on the sink, but then you get down, you squat, and you're looking up at it now, that's how a plunger really looks, right? What if you stay squatted, but then you knock the plunger onto its side, so it's like, laying across the top of the sink? That's how a plunger really looks in 2 dimensions, because it's a 3-dimensional thing, and no matter what angle you look at it from, and take a 2-dimensional photograph, like a shadow of it, it's always the only real plunger, right? Or is it like you can do lots of different angles, and all the different angles will, have a different appearance. Like if you look straight down on it, it looks like 2 circles. So that's the idea, is constellations and all sorts of perspectives. Things are based on particular points of view. So this is going to be a little bit important as we continue our exploration of language. Ready? Okay, here we go. There's a picture of a crooked palm tree looking straight up at the top of a palm tree. That is a coconut palm tree. You may not know that, but I'm telling you, and it will be important later, unless it isn't going to be important. So if you're preparing for the test, get out your piece of paper, write down your note. That was a coconut palm tree. Ready? That was a coconut palm tree. Good. Okay, it could be on the test. If you don't pass this test, there's going to be, I don't know what's going to happen if you don't pass the test, but there could be rewards, there could be punishments. You might, not get any, when you die and you go to heaven, do you get rewarded with virgin coconut oil? A lot, like gallons of virgin coconut oil, extra virgin coconut oil. I mean, how many, this is kind of an odd question. I'll come back to it later, because if you don't already get the joke here, there is one, but we'll come back to it. Okay. Above the coconut palm tree, keep in mind, it's a coconut palm tree. It could be on the test. Okay? Okay. Above that palm tree, it says I with a question mark. The letter I, capital I, with a question mark. I. The capacity for noticing, awareness, memories, and learning. I. The capacity for noticing, memories, awareness, and learning. Only in animals that can respond do we have that capacity for noticing, awareness, memories, and learning. Apparently plants only have reflex. They don't have response. They don't have learning. They don't have memories. Does your dog have memories, if you have a dog? Yeah, it has memories, right? Unless it's asleep, in which case it doesn't have access to the memories, and it wakes up and all the memories are right there available to it. It knows you. It knows where it left the ball. It knows where to dig in the yard. It knows, where it buried the bone. It knows how to run through your house without having to look and figure it out. It remembers how to run through the layout of your house or your yard or whatever, right? The animals have memories. Do plants have memories in that way? I don't think so. So, this capacity for noticing, awareness, memories, and learning, I'm calling it soul. soul. This soul is called immortal. Why? Because it's never physically born. You never don't have soul. The only time you ever have awareness, you've already got awareness. You can't have awareness without awareness. You can't have awareness without what I'm calling soul. Whenever you have the capacity for noticing stuff, you have the capacity for noticing stuff. You have the capacity for memories. This is probably unimportant tangent, so I'll be very brief. But for people who have amnesia and lose their access to memories, or their memories get erased, like a floppy disk drive or whatever, a disk, gets erased. People who have amnesia or certain kinds of injuries to their head and so on, they still have the capacity for memory. They just lose specific memories, or a whole group of memories, or all of their memories. That's a different thing. If I have a bad short-term memory, I still have the capacity for memory. So the soul, this capacity for awareness, this capacity to witness and perceive, is never physically born. It's not in plants, it's only in animals. It's a soul. That's what I'm calling soul. It's not on the test, so it's not important. If you think, oh, the word soul is important, it's not. Coconut. Okay, good. Coconut. You got to be aware of the important things here. Next we have a picture. This is a really stretched picture. That picture is much wider. If you click it, it probably will show up nice and wide. But it's a picture of some trees. You can see the mountain in the background, and in the foreground there's some white buildings. And it's just a bunch of trees at a different angle, because remember, what angle you look at the plunger is the only right one. Okay, next section. I am blank. The capacity for simple language, which allows for exclusive emphasis on particular linguistic identities. In other words, you can emphasize certain things with language. Like you can with your finger, you can point at something, but you can emphasize it with language. Like the blue bird flew. Which one? The blue one. What did it do? It flew. Are these points of emphasis important? I don't know, maybe. But you can emphasize things in language in a way that is really unique. So, the capacity for simple language, not just eat or hungry, like that's even simpler. But once we get into these simple constructions in language, simple sequences of words, then we can have exclusive emphasis on particular linguistic identities, such as the quality of blue. The blue bird flew. Oh, there's another blue thing. It's the blue car. And then another blue thing. Oh, it's the blue shirt. And you can emphasize things with the quality of blue. Or you can emphasize a certain action. Oh, look, the bird flew. Oh, and then look over there, the flag, it's flying too, right? And there's an airplane and it's flying. So you can categorize things and emphasize all the things that are flying. Or objects, types of objects. The birds. Oh, there's a blue bird, it's flying. There is a blackbird, it's singing. There is a brown bird, it's sleeping. There is a coconut bird. No, it's not. Never mind. Okay. So, the exposure of a maturing human infant to language may be called conditioning. Conditioning is from the words condict, which means with speaking, as in with diction. Did you know that? Keep in mind that God is the source of all capacity for language, all languages, all words, all sequences of words, such as these that you are witnessing right now. God is the source of all language, all capacity for language, all words, all sequences of words, including these, and all capacity to witness language, and even magically and effortlessly decode the sequences of symbols into intelligible ideas, like you're doing right now. Are you doing that right now? Are you magically and effortlessly decoding these sequences of symbols into intelligible ideas? If you were speaking, would you have to think, how do I form the sound of O? And how do I make the word contagious? How do I actually make the sounds of the word contagious? No, your tongue just does it in your mouth and your diaphragm and your body. It's just amazing. It's magical and effortless. But it didn't used to be like that, huh? It didn't. That's right. When you were like an infantile child and very youthful and childish and childlike, you had to practice how to say g and child. It was hard to pronounce that word. Remember when you first learned how to speak English? Yeah, and you were like, wow, the grammar is tricky in this language. And the spelling is like a B. Okay. If you think my jokes are dumb, you are a coconut bird. All right. I mean, that's on the test, by the way. Okay. So keep in mind that God is the source of all capacity for language, all languages, all words, all sequences of words, and all capacity to witness language and even magically and effortlessly decode the sequences of symbols into intelligible ideas. If that was too fast, keep in mind that I do have this written down so you can read it. You can pause this audio thing and you can read the thing because it's very slow. When you read it yourself and you don't read it very quickly, then it's very slow. Okay, now, intelligible ideas. What are they? Ideas mean patterns of attention or organizations of attention. We emphasize certain things. That's an idea. When you emphasize, like, it's a bluebird, that's not the same as a bird. See, it's a different idea. It's a blue one. What kind of one? Blue. What kind of coconut? Bird. And you can tell sometimes that, like in the examples I give, if I give an example that actually doesn't fit the example I'm giving, if that made sense, then it's a joke. And in language, you can do that. You can have jokes. They're cool. You should try it. No, really, you should. It might fail, but you should try it anyway. All right. So there's, oh, look, another picture with the white building over there. This is actually the same picture, or it's the same stuff that's in the picture below with the mountain in the background and the trees and stuff. Well, this is like right up close, right by those buildings. And you've got a couple trees there in the center of the picture, and then there's like a window. And you see the reflection of trees off of the window, which is the real tree in the reflection. That's the real one. Okay. Now, above that, it says these words. Now, we got to get serious here because we're getting to the test soon. It's coming in like within the next 48 years. I am a blank. I am a blank. Capacity for interpretation, presumption, and speculation, which allows for very rapid learning, but also complex misinterpretations, confusions, pretenses, hysterias, and deliriums. Because I'm going into such detail on this issue in my other paragraphs and other sections, I'm not going to say a lot about it right now. But I am a coconut bird, right? I am a good sailor. I am a tall earthling. All of those are speculations, they're constructions in language, that we could say they're interpretations, they're just a sequence of words. The ability to get more complex with language allows for much more rapid learning, the rapid transfer of information. You can read something and learn it. You can read the instruction manual and bam, 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 put together the furniture. See, you just follow the instructions, you put it together, bam, 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 very fast. See? See how fast that was? So, the capacity for language, though, as we get more complex, as you get older, as the infant goes from really simple stuff to more complex stuff, it actually has a potential for misinterpretations, confusions, pretenses, which would not be possible for a really, really innocent child. But also, with the confusion, there can come frustration, resentment, hysteria, antagonism, contempt, guilt, shame, delirium, delusion, idolatry. Okay, we'll come back to that later. First, a really, really important thing. That is, what is that? That is half of a coconut right there. Right there is half of a coconut. So, that's what that is. Okay. Now, reading above from over that, since I am a blank, then of course blank. Have you ever said something like that? Have you ever heard anybody say something like that? Since I am a blank, then blank. Well, they probably didn't say blank, did they? Because people use other words instead of blank to fill in the blank. Okay, the capacity, okay, to identify oneself, one's being, as a lasting pattern of linguistic interpretation called a persona. Since I am a blank, then of course, blank. This is a really new level of, new stage of development. The capacity to identify oneself or one's being as a lasting pattern of linguistic interpretation called a persona. The persona lasts. It's a lasting pattern of linguistic interpretations. I am this kind of a persona, this kind of a person, this kind of a being, this kind of a self, this kind of an organism, this kind of a life. I'm a human, I'm a male, I'm an American, or I'm a Chinese or whatever. Can you say I'm a Chinese? I'm a coconut bird. Okay, moving on. Only, do Chinese people like coconut in their dishes, like Thailand and Japan and China? That's Asia. What's the difference? Okay, fine. There's a difference. Is it extra virgin coconut bird? Okay. Only a persona. Okay, so we're talking about personas. Are you getting confused yet? Because you shouldn't be, because this is all super clear, and it's like there's no jokes in this, and there's no challenges to your wit or wisdom or intellectual capacity at all. So anyway, only a persona would ask complex jokes like, could you repeat that again? No. Complex jokes like, hold on, what's going to happen to the soul of the coconut bird once it is broken open and we drink its milk and eat its flesh? What's going to happen to the soul of the coconut? I'm worried. Should we say a prayer first so that when the coconut dies, Santa Claus gives it some virgin coconut oil virgins as a reward for being a good coconut? Did you get it? That was the joke. Did you get it? That was the joke. All right. That was awesome, wasn't it? Okay, it's not about a coconut bird. It's about you. This is a metaphor for you, okay? If you believe that after you die, if you earn your way into heaven, then you get to be rewarded by virgin coconut oil virgins, you could be like Santa Claus, okay? All right. And good coconuts, not just, have you ever had a coconut that was like really dry and it wasn't very good? Have you ever had that coconut flour from that one company? It was like that, it's like moldy and it's not good. It's not a good coconut. Okay, those don't get into heaven. That's all I'm saying. If you want to get into heaven, extra virgin, cold pressed. Okay, heating ruins the MCTs. The what does that stand for? Medium chain triglycerides. Okay, it's important. If you didn't get that, it's not on the test. It is important, but it's not on the test. Okay, moving on. Next, the bright colored picture with the light shining through the trees. There's a little green leaves of the treetops, and then the reddish tone of the light. Oh my gosh, that's awesome, isn't it? That's what a real plunger looks like. That's the real perspective. Is that a plunger? Wait, those are trees, and that's the sun. Okay. Above that, it says, when the linguistic pattern of I am only me, this isolated persona, not that one, I'm not like that, I'm like this. When that linguistic pattern of I am only me, I'm only this way, when that linguistic pattern is present, then that pattern can develop its own momentum, or inertia, or karma. That's another stage of intellectual, or it's another stage of development. We could say intellectual development. When the linguistic pattern of I'm only me is present, then that pattern, that persona, that isolated persona can develop momentum or inertia or karma. The reality of a constantly changing multi-dimensional array is frozen into a particular shadow. Like, here's how I'm not. I'm the opposite of that. That's how people shouldn't be. Here's how people should be. I'm how people should be. The reality of a constantly changing multi-dimensional array, a perfect image of God, if you will, or a perfect creation of God, a constantly changing multi-dimensional array is frozen into a particular shadow. Like taking a single photograph of a sign with the word idealism Okay, so there's a sign with the word idealism on it. You take a photograph of it, then you go to a different angle and take a different photograph of the same sign with the same word, but it's a different angle. And then you pick which one of those photographs is the real me, the right one, and you worship that photograph as the real me. So there's a constantly changing multidimensional array that is what you really are as a creation of God, an ongoing, transforming creation of God. And that constantly changing multidimensional array can be frozen linguistically. It's not real freezing. It's like no ice involved, no coconut oil. But if you do take coconut oil and put cocoa in it and then put it in the refrigerator, it makes a great candy and snack. So you may want to keep that in mind. Moving on. The multidimensional array that you are can be frozen linguistically, poetically. It's not real. It's just linguistically frozen. The multidimensional array that you are can be frozen into a particular shadow, a particular angle, a particular photograph like that. Yeah, that one. That's the real one. You take that single photograph of the sign of the word idealism, and then you worship that photograph as me. That's how I really am. That's the real persona. That's the real photograph. That's the real sign with the word idealism on it, because it's the right word. It's in English, which is the best language of all, right? So, all of that, you might have noticed, all of that is delirious, delusional, hysterical. It's hysterical. Oh, gosh. That is hysterical stuff, isn't it? It is so hysterical. Hysterical things are homosexual. I just realized. That is so hysterical. Okay, that was not. I apologize. No, I don't. No, yeah, I do. I take it back. I take it back! There. Now, that's better. I took it back. It didn't even happen. All of that is delirious, delusional, and hysterical, because that's not the right... See, you don't want the photograph of the sign of how you should be to be at the wrong angle. You need the lighting right. You need a good camera. Okay? If you take video of it on your iPhone, that's cool too. That's all right. Is that all right? Yeah, that's right. Okay. So, this delirious, hysterical, delusional attachment to a particular persona as the way I really am and the real me. Does this sound familiar, by the way? No? Okay. This delusional, hysterical, delirious attachment and identifying with a particular persona as how I really am, and then there's all the things that I'm not. All of that is called the fall. Lucifer, the angel, falls from grace. This is the fall. It implies a rejection or discounting of the fundamental primacy of God, the inclusive, eternal, almighty creativity called God. We're rejecting that, or one at a time. I reject the fundamental primacy of God as the source of all things and say, no, I'm isolated from that. I'm isolated from everything else, the galaxy, the planet, the continent. No. This is about me. This is kind of like a narcissism. In the Greek mythology, we call it Narcissus. In other forms of mythology and cosmology and poetic psychology, we would call it the fall of Satan or Lucifer or something like that. I don't even know. So this is the fall. The fall of Adam, or I don't know, do people say that? Eve? The fall of Eve? The mistake that she made this big mistake, and after that, wow, it's trouble. All right, so at the fall, there's this implying of a rejection of the fundamental primacy of God, the fundamental rejecting or discounting of the fundamental primacy of God. So I am the creator, not God's the creator and God creates me as, people use terms like co-creator. Not that. I am the creator. I'm responsible. Everything's my fault. If it goes well, it's my glory. It's a very different thing than what you would witness in a little kid. Little kids don't have those kind of pretenses and personas and significance and all the suffering that can go with it. So at the fall, or we could say the original sin. I guess that's another popular way to make reference to this stage. The eternal, inclusive, almighty creativity branches to form mortal living things such as organisms and stars and planets and cells. But some organism learns language and gets to a developmental stage where the organism says, hey, God doesn't know as well as I do. I know how things should be and how things shouldn't be. I'm going to now go around and condemn the things that shouldn't be, prevent the things that shouldn't be, end the things that shouldn't be that are. It's going to be a lot of stress. It's going to be a lot of stress. It's going to be a lot of stress. And why? Because there's this linguistic identifying with this particular pattern of how I really am, called a persona. And that persona has its momentum, its karma, its inertia, its sentence. Like it's sentenced to have to reunite with God. I'm getting ahead. Okay. Above that, a picture of a night sky. I guess, is that the Aurora Borealis? What is that? Or the Milky Way, right? That's the Milky Way. There, so you can see like the yellowy thing, the yellowy clouds where it looks like the sun setting, but then there's like, is that the Milky Way? I'm not really sure. Huh? It can't be? Okay, apparently my astronomical knowledge base has been questioned. That is the Aurora Austrioporcalis, which is a form of extra virgin olive oil and coconut burn. Now, the green at the bottom part of the picture, those are trees. They're probably pine trees, but they could be coconut trees. Now, the thing in the white part of the image, that's the coconut milk. And above all of that is another paragraph. Next, and this is the second to the last one, by the way. Next comes the capacity for the persona, which is the fictional role or identity. To argue, to condemn, to agonize, to rationalize, to compete, to ridicule, in competition with others, to hide, to distract. The persona, the soul might witness the persona saying things like, yeah, whatever, but look at what is really important. This right here should not be like this. How insulting, how disgusting, how disturbing, how disruptive, how improper. Anyway, like I was saying before, no other photographs of that sign from any other angle are me. I am only this isolated persona right here in that one photograph from 1986. Who is heroically sorting reality into how it should be and how it should not be. Then, of course, I must heroically save the victims of reality by condemning the villains. That's very important. It's very heroic, by the way, to condemn the villains. I don't know if you knew that. Very brave and heroic to condemn the villains. And then, after condemning the villains heroically and bravely, then making the next step. Are you ready for the next step? Are you exhausted already? Because there's a lot of work in this for this persona that's in hell and stuff. Okay, there's a lot of work because after it condemns the villains heroically and bravely, then it has to make reality into how it really should be, according to some linguistic ideals that I worship instead of worshiping reality as a whole. Okay, I know better than God. God that created everything perfectly in God's own image and all that stuff. Psh, come on, that guy must be arrogant and like project things onto other people because that's ridiculous and hilarious. Okay? I know the real way that things should be. First of all, things should be however I say they should be. Okay? Should you get that? Things should be however I say they should be. And if I change how I say things should be in the future, what were you saying? Were we talking about how, oh yes, my infallible authority, right. So I know better than God, and what else? So I'm going to, fix reality, because I'm the savior of reality, right? By the way, if you keep getting in the way of me saving reality from reality, which I do not recommend, then we're going to have a serious problem because of your evil conspiracy to frustrate and sabotage my desperate panic to earn my way into heaven. So that's a warning right there. Okay? That's a warning. Coconut bird, it's on the test. Write it down. Okay. Now, in parentheses at the very bottom, this form of sincere idealism is known as, this is the long name, there's a shorter name for it, but this is the long one, the hell of the eternal darkness of avoiding forbidden negativity, because negativity is very bad and frightening, such as fear, which is evil and negative and bad and should be avoided. Okay, above all of that, now we have a picture of, now you can see the little thumb and fingers off to the left, and then there's the trunk of a tree, and then the guy's holding some kind of a prism. I think it's a guy, whatever. There's a prism, and it actually changes like how the tree trunk looks. Like you put the prism over the tree trunk, and it looks different. It's weird. It's all weird. It's like when you put a straw into a glass of milk, or no, okay, not milk. Bad. I was thinking of coconut milk. If you put a straw into a glass of water, okay, then the actual the line of the straw where it hits into the water and the glass, see, it looks different right there, really. It's a different appearance. It's like a constellation. Or when you take a picture of a photograph of a sign with the word idealism on it from a particular angle, and then you Photoshop it, and then you take it and you Xerox copy it, and then you worship it as how I really am. That's wrong. They'll do that. If you do that, I mean, you can do that, but if you do that, it's gonna be hilarious. All right, so there's a picture, the green grass, the tree trunk, the prism-y thing in the middle, the fingers. This is important. Okay, now we're at the last. This is the last thing. So if you didn't learn everything that there is to learn in this yet, get ready to learn everything there is to learn from this whole thing right here in the last section, because this is the last section. It's also the final section. Last is the capacity for the soul to witness the persona as merely a temporary figment of language. Did you know that if you roll your eyes at my humor, it makes my humor less funny? I don't know if you ever rolled your eyes at my humor and you thought, see, now his humor is less funny. That's genius. And stop, please, because you're getting in the way of me rescuing reality from reality, okay? Seriously, it's a problem. Okay, last is the capacity for the soul to witness the persona as merely a temporary figment of language. Okay, the persona is merely a temporary figment of language. It always was, it always will be, and the soul has a capacity to witness that the persona is just a temporary figment of language, a temporary pattern of language, an idea, a thing with a momentum, a karma, an inertia. It's a way of interpreting, a way of relating to life, a way of labeling. It is not fundamental. It is like a constellation from one particular angle. Okay, fine. There's nothing wrong with two-dimensional shadows of three-dimensional arrays, but they are not the three-dimensional array. So the soul endures across personas. Personas can change. Personality can change, right? The personality of a 8-month-old, 8-year-old, 18-year-old, 80-year-old, it can be the same organism but have various distinct personality traits and qualities, right? So the soul endures as personas change. For the soul as a child, the same soul as a youth, then the same soul as an adult. It's the same soul, but as the different forms, as these different personas, you could say, the child, the youth, the adult, whatever. They're like different nouns, different labels, different identities, different entities, or not, whatever. But in language, there is this issue, this potential for confusion around this issue. The soul doesn't change, but the soul witnesses the changing things, like persona changing. Like the seasons of the year change, personas can change across decades or years or whatever, or across, hey, you take a couple drinks of that, couple cups of that drink, couple bottles of that stuff, or a couple pills of that type, or whatever. Does persona change that quickly? In some ways, yeah. Maybe not abruptly and totally, but in the case of like multiple personality disorders and stuff, people can have like huge changes in personality super fast. A single organism can have huge changes in personality very quickly, such as if they fall asleep, then wake up. Okay, now the soul witnesses the persona's attempt to reach salvation, or it's possible for the persona to attempt to reach salvation, and of course, the soul would witness that, right? Because that's what the soul does. What does the soul do anyway? It notices stuff. It has the capacity to notice and have memories and stuff like that. Yeah. Okay. And to learn. So it witnesses things. In order to learn, it witnesses things. The soul witnesses the persona's attempt to reach salvation, which is a poetic metaphor for the reunifying of the persona and God. Now, what does reunifying imply? Okay, first, it implies that they were unioned or united or unioned. Persona and God were unioned. If they're going to reunify, they had to be unified, and then they got ununified, and now they're going to reunify. So the soul witnesses the persona's attempt to reach salvation, which is a poetic metaphor for a reunifying of the persona with God. Now, the twist on that is all of that idea, that metaphor, etc., it is inherently hysterical, delusional, presumptive, and delirious. For that linguistic metaphor falsely presumes, imprecisely presumes, an isolation of a persona from God, which has never happened. It's impossible. Why is it impossible for a persona to be isolated from God? Since the persona is like a branch of the pre-existing divine tree. You've got the pre-existing divine tree, and it forms different branches, and the branches grow. And the persona is one of those growths, whatever. You can't reunify the branch to the tree if they're already unified and always have been. Rituals to... Okay, so the branch is always entirely composed of the tree. The branch is the tree. The branch is a limb of the tree, or a branch of the tree. The branch is just a branch of the tree. The persona is not a persona isolated from God. It's a persona created by God. It's a facet of God, a face of God, a mask of God, a persona of God. Who else would it be a persona of? God's the inclusive, almighty, eternal, ever-present, creativity, right? So what is there other than God to create stuff? If you say, oh, well, the God created the tree and the tree created the branch, it's still God. Okay, so rituals. Oh, yeah, this is great. This is really important. This is the test. You ready? What's another word for coconut that's actually the same word as coconut? Coconut, that's right. Okay. Rituals to reunite the branch to the tree are all poetic, hysterical, playful, figurative, dramatic, comedic, theatrical, pretending. The soul, which has no capacity to condemn, because it's just the capacity to notice things and witness things. Or if it has, you could say it develops the capacity to condemn, but that's like not the soul. That's a branch distinct from what I'm calling soul. The soul itself has no capacity to condemn, and it is the divine feminine principle of love, like unconditional love, because it doesn't condemn anything. It just notices stuff. It just witnesses things. It perceives. Oh, okay. So we could call that the Holy Spirit. And this soul, this divine feminine principle of unconditional love, this Holy Spirit, it witnesses the play or the fiction, right, the theatrical fiction, as simply a play or a fictional performance. And when the soul, or Holy Spirit, or divine feminine principle of unconditional love, witnesses the persona doing its play or fictional performance, well, it forgives the persona for the sin of portraying a fallen persona with chronic tensions of hysteria and shame and delirium and resentment and delusion and contempt and arrogance and the idolatrous worship of a particular formation and language that can be called my real persona, and how things really should be, and how I really am, and how the world really is, and how the world really should be. All of those kinds of idolatrous ideals, or those idolatrous worship of ideals, the soul loves them anyway. It's fine. That's all. It's like It's just taking a different angle of the picture of the same sign. It doesn't change the sign or take a photograph from a different angle. Okay, you want to pretend to be isolated from God? Go for it. Clap, standing ovation, encore, right? Whatever. There you go. Awesome. That was so convincing too. Did you see that the little girl in the second act and how she cried at the end? And I thought she was really upset. All right, so the idolatrous worship of a particular formation and language can be called consider there's such a thing as the idolatrous worship of a particular formation and language that we can call my real persona. It's the real plunger. Which plunger is it? It is the only real, true plunger. Okay? Which are the kind with the black handles. I mean, I'm sorry, not the black handles, the black bases. If you have a gray base, that's not a real plunger. Okay? I know what a real plunger looks like. They have a black thing at the bottom. They're not gray. And they're not like wet and covered with poo. That is not, hey, you don't even need to go there. All right, in conclusion, this is the last thing I'm going to say. In conclusion, if you're experiencing relief right now, that is a sign that it's almost over. In conclusion, sarcasm is the absolute worst form of reverse psychology. Let me repeat that. Sarcasm is the absolute worst form of reverse psychology, which is why it not only should not exist, but cannot. This has been a radical new perspective on spirituality. Or it could be a radically new perspective on spirituality. Or it could be the story of why the plunger did not earn virgin coconut oil when it died, because it had not been a black plunger, right? It was gray. That is, I don't know what the plunger was thinking. What happens to the soul of the coconut when it dies and we drink the milk and eat the flesh? It's reborn. It's reborn as coconut flour. That's what happens. Okay, watch out for trees that are at different angles, because if you take a picture of the sign that says the word idealism on the sign, then you could get confused. Okay, no, that shouldn't happen. Confusion is a sign of potential to learn, and learning is the root of all sarcasm. No, damn it. Is this on the test? Coconut bird.